Thank you for joining Give God 90 Radio on Demand. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. It is such an honor for you to invite me into your airspace for just a little while as we dig through the language, the culture, and the history that is revealed in the truth that is in the words of our Creator, in our Bibles. Okay, if you haven't done so, please download the Give God 90 app. It is absolutely free. Someone else has paid for it, so you don't have to. Now that the commercial is over, let me begin what I want to talk about today, because I really hope that I can get through the next 30 minutes or so uninterrupted. It has been a very busy time around here today as I have tried to get this recorded. And this is about the third or fourth or fifth time that I've tried to get started, so hopefully I can be left alone for just a little while as I get through this with you, because this is important. This is important. Are Christians delusional? As we look through the history of faith, of course, we know if we choose to believe our Bibles, right? And I'm assuming that most people who listen to this are going to believe their Bible. We look back and we see Adam and Eve, and they actually talked and walked and had interaction with the Creator himself. Now, as that happened, they had children. Their children said, well, Mom and Dad got kicked out of this place that they talked about, and, they must have been nuts, because we just aren't seeing this person that they, had so much faith in. We're out here working and toiling and doing these things, and we're getting, thorns in our feet. We're getting this. We're getting, we got all these problems. How can they talk about this place that was so wonderful, so great, so fantastic, called this Garden of Eden, this wonderful place? We don't see it. We don't believe it. Later on, their children and their children and their children just got so far away from the goodness of their Creator that when God looked down, the only man he recognized was Noah. And he said, Noah, I've got a job for you because things are so bad. And Noah said, okay, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Okay, my paraphrase. And he starts building this huge construction project, right? And people looked at him and said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm building an ark. Why? Well, God told me to. Who? That soon after creation, they asked, who? Why? No, what's rain? They didn't know what rain was at that point in time in history. They looked at him and they said, Noah, you're crazy. You claim to be this person of faith, but you're just plain nuts, Noah. Of course, those folks drowned, right? There was the rain and the flood. They drowned. That's simple. Let's fast forward about 4,000 years, and we come to where we are now. There are people of faith out there, and the secular world says, there's no such thing as God. That's a fairy tale for the ignorant. That's just a fairy tale for the ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. We have science. They have replaced a Creator with science, because it is easier for them to understand something that they think than something they can see. See, what science is very simple to understand. Science is nothing more than a theory that is either proven correct or incorrect. You take, and I'm using a very, very, very generic definition here, okay? I know there's a definition for science, but I don't want to use that one. What I'm really looking for is they're not replacing God with science. They're replacing God with what they want science to be. And what it is no matter where the theory and the proof lead, they're still going to believe what they want. They're still going to believe in quite often a misdirected mistruth. Sometimes it's a very well-planned lie, but sometimes it's just, somebody miscalculated. They didn't realize they had a fatal flaw in their calculation, and when they got to the end of the equation, no matter what that equation came out, they chose to believe what it should have been, what they wanted it to be. And yet these people are looking at people of faith, people who believe in a creator, and they're saying, you people are crazy, you're believing in a fairy tale. When they themselves are also believing in their own fairy tale. Let's break that down a little bit more, though. There are, and I'm going to say this, there are Christians who are trained to believe that their creator is nothing more than a, lack of better term, slave genie, okay? He's going to grant you these wishes. All you have to do is hit your knees and pray, and if you do it hard enough, and you do it right enough, and you do it often enough, He's going to give you whatever you ask for, as long as you say the right words in the right order and do the right things at the right time. That's how some of these folks are trained. Not every denomination works that way, I know that, but certain denominations do. There are certain denominations out there, I should say certain denominations of Christianity out there, that they say, look, if you want a big bank account, all you have to do is believe you're going to get a big bank account, and it will happen. It will. You just have to think good thoughts, and it will happen, because your God wants you to be happy. He gives you all these things, and He wants you to do this. That is I'm going to say this flat out, that not only is that ridiculous, it's ridiculous garbage, okay? It's that simple, it's that easy to understand. Anybody who picks up the Bible and reads it knows that that's not the way it works. And you don't have to get any farther than Genesis chapter 3 to figure that out, where it says, Adam, from now on you're going to work for what you get. Okay? It means the harder you work, the more you get, typically. in not the perfect world, but in our world. Let's take this a little bit farther. Okay? And I'm speaking specifically to Christians here now, okay? And for my Jewish listeners, you've got your own issues with this, because the world for a long, long time looked at you and said, you people are crazy. While you were looking at the rest of the world and saying, can't you see how simple this is? Okay? We know how that works. We know what was happening. But for my Christian listeners specifically right now, and I want to read just a little bit of, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, okay? This was actually sent to me by someone, and part of this says that the Old Covenant, and what he's talking about here is the Old Testament, doesn't represent the Messiah. Instead, it magnified sin. Then he asked the question, why on earth would you want to magnify sin when you could believe the gospel of the New Testament, when most of the readers of the New Testament don't understand what it is anyway? I just added that part. They don't understand is the part I added. The writer of this continues, we can't continue to send a mixed message that contains part of something that doesn't exist. What he's basically trying to say here is that it doesn't matter what it says in the Old Testament. It doesn't matter what it says in what the Jewish people call the Tanakh, the Torah, the writings, and the prophets. Basically, it's Christians' Old Testament. He says we don't have to worry about that part of the book. We want to live on the second story. We don't need a foundation. We don't need a first floor. That's what they're saying. And it's very, very dangerous territory. You cannot build a house beginning with the second story. It's impossible to do it. If you don't have the foundation and you don't have that first story, you can't build a second story. You can't. Now, I live currently near the beach, and there's a lot of homes where what they'll do is they'll drive pilings into the sand, okay? And then, they'll come up 8 feet off of the sand line, and they'll begin attaching lumber to these pilings. And that's what they're going to build their house on. And these houses that they build this way are less than... I don't want to... Now, some of these are very, very, very nice, very expensive homes. But they're less than perfect. And the reason they're less than perfect is because they have no foundation. These houses are designed in such a way that they have to be able to shift and twist a little bit as those pilings, sometimes one piling might sink a little more than the others. Sometimes these pilings twist a little bit when the floods happen. And this whole house has to be able to shift and to move and to twist and to flux and flex. There's a problem when you do that with a home, right? Because that's when you wind up with cracks in your walls. That's when you wind up with cabinet doors that don't match up. That's what happens. You wind up with floors that aren't always going to be level. You wind up with doors that don't seal properly, windows that don't open and close properly, right? Because everything's twisting and moving. There's no foundation, there's no first floor. They try to start really, literally on the second floor, and it doesn't work. That's what some of these folks are trying to base their faith on. Because they have no foundation, and their second floor consistently has to flux, it has to flex, it has to be so movable that there's cracks in their walls. Their doors aren't sealing. Their windows don't open and close. Typically when the folks do this, they're going to say, oh, well, Jesus came to fulfill all that stuff. We don't have to worry about it anymore. It's already been done. It's already taken care of. Well, if it's already done and already taken care of, my next question is, okay, so why are you not worrying about or why do you worry about the Ten Commandments? Obviously, if all that stuff's been done away with, you don't have a problem with adultery. You don't have a problem with theft. You don't have a problem with murder. You don't have a problem with anything. You can go do whatever you want. Oh, no, we can't do that. Why not? Why not? If all of that stuff in the Old Testament has been taken care of, we don't have to worry about it anymore, then let me ask this. Is there still such a thing as sin? Because 1 John 3:4 says that sin is a transgression of the law. So if there is no more law, if that's done away with, there is no more sin. If there's no more sin, why worry? Do whatever you want. Do you see how that works? But now we get into what we consider the cafeteria Christian, where they pick and choose what they want to believe. Now, here's a problem with the cafeteria Christian. If you get to pick and choose what you want to believe, then I get to pick and choose what I want to believe. And what I want to believe might be different than what you want to believe, but it's all okay because it's all been done away with anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? Do you see how that circular reasoning works? You just chase each other around the mulberry bush until you're tired. And, you're still nowhere because you have no foundation. You're always trying to shift. You're always trying to flex. You're always trying to flux. Everything's got to be in this movable position, because you've got no foundation to stand on. You've got no first floor to support you. You've got nothing underneath of you. You're trying to hang out there in the air on nothing. Now, I realize that you can get in an airplane and fly today, but I don't know any person who can, in all reality, raise their feet off the floor unsupported. Okay, if you're standing, you can't step on nothing. Okay, you can try it all you want, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, I need to go to Proverbs. This is where it is so foundational. Proverbs chapter 3, and I'm going to start in verse 1. Solomon writes, and I'm getting this from the Tree of Life version, so, okay? And I'm going to change a couple of words for the people who don't appreciate the Hebrew in this, okay? Solomon writes, beginning in verse 1 of chapter 3 of Proverbs, "My son, do not forget my teaching. Let your heart keep my commands, for the length of days and years of life, and peace they will add to you. Let kindness and truth never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will gain favor and good name in the eyes of God and of men. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." Okay, here we go. The key point there is don't trust your own understanding. A lot of the people who want to talk about the Old Testament being done away with, okay, the law's been fulfilled, they don't understand the definition of the word when it was translated into English. Let me say that again. They don't understand the definition of the word when it was first translated into English, because some of those definitions have changed over time. They didn't change over time when they were taken out of the Hebrew or even out of the Greek, but they have changed over time with the evolution of the English language. The word fulfilled can be complete. But when you talk about something being complete, being finished, being done, okay, what they're talking about is only part of it. It's not the whole thing. They like to point to a couple of verses in the Old Testament and say, "See, this is all taken care of." But what they don't realize is there are timelines in these things that tell them when those things happen. And we're not at those timelines yet. That's the reason why they need to be flexible on this home with no foundation. They've really started to build a house with nothing underneath of them. They don't have the foundation, so they can't stand on anything firm. They can't, and they don't understand why when people stand on the foundation that begins in Genesis. Let me say this again. They cannot understand. I just said that in a weird way. Let me say this again. They cannot understand why people who stand on the foundation that begins in Genesis, why those folks are so grounded in Scripture, why they understand more about this thing called the New Testament, why they realize that the folks who try to do away with what we call the Old Testament have no foundation. They want to talk about sin, but they want to talk about it in a past tense kind of a way. Sin is an ongoing problem. It's not something that used to happen and doesn't happen anymore. If that was the case, if we didn't have to worry about sin anymore, then nobody obviously needs to worry about judgment, right? And that's a lot of part about what Christians are trying to stand on. They say, we don't have, as long as you believe, but then they forget that it's true what James wrote, that demons believe and tremble. You can believe in the Creator. That's not a problem. The problem is, are you willing to live the way He designed you to live? That's what these folks don't want to do. They don't want to live the way they're designed to live. They don't have the self-discipline to live a life that God says will keep you healthy, keep you happy, keep you content, give you all the years that He wants to give you. Instead, they want to do what they want to do. Now, I have said before that that's replacement theology, and it is. Whenever you look at something that it says in the Bible and you say, well, that might have been nice for those folks, but for me, I want to do something else. You have just replaced, let me say that again, you have just replaced God with self. And in the words of a dear friend, Haley, congratulations, you're now God. Okay? I really liked it when she used to say that about folks. It's like, well, you want to do this, and God says that? Well, congratulations, you're now God, right? She's one of the few people I know who's almost as sarcastic as I am sometimes. Lovely young lady. Think the world of her. And her parents, they are just great folks. But she's right. And I don't think she realizes how right she is. When you replace God with self, congratulations, you're now God. Sorry, it doesn't work that way, though. The Almighty tells us over and over, He doesn't change. Right? Christians, even the Christians that say that the Old Testament's been done away with, will tell you God doesn't change. See, they like to pick and choose. They want to have it their own way. They think they can do whatever they want because they have replaced their Creator with their own consciousness, their own thoughts, their own mind. They might as well be praying to themselves because the Almighty tells us in Isaiah that the prayers of the wicked are an abomination. And if you have taken God out of the picture, why would He listen to you? Why would He listen to you? Think about that. I know many, many, many churches. And you look at these churches and they have these prayer groups, they have these what they call prayer chains. And on these prayer chains, somebody gets in a situation and they'll put their name on this list and say, would you please pray for me? And many times they're on there for week after week after week, and nothing changes or their situation gets worse, something like that. And nobody realizes why. Nobody has ever stopped to think, why, when we're told that we have the authority to do this and that, why this person isn't being helped. Now, there's a couple of reasons why that is, and I really don't want to get into that here, but the main foundational reason is they've replaced God. They no longer are seeking the face of the Creator. They are instead looking for some very godfather, for lack of a better description, to give them what they think they want at the time. That's what they're looking for. if somebody becomes ill, they get sick, and you say, I want to be better. Are you willing to go through the steps that it takes to be better? Are you willing to do what it takes? And I don't mean go to the doctor. Are you willing to do what God says to get better? Everybody's willing to take a pill, right? That's easy. But are you willing to do what God says it takes to get better? Christians have this delusion, and many of them have been trained in this delusion, that all we have to do is ask this person that we can't see, that we don't understand, that we don't even want to get to know. We can beg for whatever we want, and he has to give it to us. All we have to do is say the right words in the right order at the right time, and he magically has to do what we say. That's what makes Christianity delusional. That's what makes the secular world look at Christians today and say, are you crazy? That's what makes it so difficult for churches today to reach out in the United States, especially where we are really a country whose communication system far exceeds that of the rest of the world. But churches are not communicating the message of the gospel. They're not even communicating the message of the Bible because they're not living the way it says to live. They're not doing what it says to do. And they're trying to convince other people, here's this book, you need to read this, do what it says, when the other people are looking at them, well, you're not doing it. You're not living it. And this example's been given before. You can bring somebody from another planet, if that would have been possible, teach them how to read, give them a Bible, and chances are they would understand what it said, okay? But you tell them to pick someone out in the world who's actually doing it, they're not going to be able to. Now, something I want to talk about this week with Myra is looking at the people in the Bible and thinking, are they real or are they fairy tales? And we have to remember they're real people. And oftentimes, we look at these folks and we say, you know what, they were bigger than life, they're better than life. And reality is, they were just us. They were just us in history. That's all it is. They were people too. Nothing magic about them. Nothing special about them. They were just us in history. They made the same mistakes we do. But there's a difference with a couple of them. And that is they realized, if I want to be better, I have to do what my Creator says to do. If I want to have the most potential and reach the most potential I can reach, I need to follow my Creator's instructions. If I want to improve my life, I have to do what God says, not go against what He says. If I want to be the best person I can be, then I have to make sure that I have a firm foundation. I have to make sure that what I'm standing on is the words that my Creator spoke, so that I can depend, that I don't have to shift anything when I get to the second story. It's going to be just as strong, just as stout, just as concrete as this rock that is the word of my Creator. That is the one thing I can depend on. It's the one thing I can stand on. It's the one thing, and I've said this before, Malachi is my favorite verse. It says, I, Yehovah, do not change, so that you, the sons of Jacob, are not destroyed. When you can stand on that foundation and know that the Almighty is not going to change, and the reason He doesn't change is so that we are not destroyed, my heavens, that takes away all the delusion. That takes away all the fairy tales. That takes away all of all of the craziness because now we have something to stand on. We have something firm. We have laid a foundation that goes back before creation. And that foundation that goes back before creation, that is the Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, are Christians delusional? Some of them are, yes, absolutely, because they want to believe something that isn't true. Are Christians delusional? Some of them are, yes, because what they think they know, they really don't know. Are Christians delusional? Yeah, they are. I'm not questioning their faith, not at all. What I am questioning, and what I will continue to question, is the way that they apply their faith to their life. And when that happens, when push comes to shove, you either believe God or you don't. You either believe God and you stand on that foundation, or you say, no, I'm going out on my own. The ultimate replacement theology. Replacing God with me. Something I hope none of you ever hear me say and mean it, other than, as I'm using that as an example. But I hope I never get to that point again. I've been there. I've done it. I didn't like the results. Don't ever want to do it again. And I hope you join me with that sentiment. So, all that being said, have a wonderful week, and I hope you will join us Thursday, because I'm hoping to be live. I'm not expecting anything this week to come up, where we will look at the people in the Bible, and we want to look at how we react to those folks. Okay, so that should be an interesting discussion between Maya and I, because we've had this discussion before, and she's had some interesting things to say about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a blessed week.